1993 was a year when the country just had to endure. It marked the beginning of the lost decade officially. The Liberal Democratic Party of Japan failed to gain a majority that year and found itself faced down by a coalition government against them. The economy, as it stood, was what some economists would call a balance sheet recession, in which mounting debt caused companies to focus on saving and paying down instead of spending or investing. Insolvency continued to be a long-standing issue for Japanese companies during this time. However, many of the old standbys in the mecha genre continued to move forward in spite of this. The Brave Express Might Gain was the next entrant in the Brave series and was focused around a rich kid who piloted a giant robot, kind of like a weird mecha piloting Batman. All the standards of the Brave series were here, and that meant toys, that meant combining mecha, and this time the theme was trains. The audience they had found had yet to grow out of it, and the production company Sunrise aimed to please. Neketsu Saikyo Gozaurer took the usual idea of kids piloting mecha, like from Zambot 3, and took it to an illogical extreme. Another entrant in the Eldran series, Gozaurer pit the forces of the Kikaika Empire against a whole 6th grade class with dinosaur robots at their back. The similarities between this series and the Brave series was quite obvious, though this particular year had stronger designs than that year's Brave series. Sadly, this would also be the last full show in the Eldran series because the next one never materialized. It would remain as an OVA in 2002, but that's a story for another episode. Kishin Corps, also known as Alien Defender Geo Armor Kishin Corps, released its first episode this year. The series takes place in 1941, where aliens have attacked and allied with the Axis powers. The Kishin Corps used that same alien technology to fend off both the aliens and the Axis, who were trying to steal and take the robots. The OVA was based off a light novel series and featured a great design aesthetic that helped make it feel like it was based in that period. Kishin Corps lasted for 7 episodes and was produced in part by Geneon, which got it brought over to the States in short order. Mobile Suit Victory Gundam was set in the Universal Century and was the last full series to take place in that world. The series was something of a reversal from typical Gundam shows to that point, as it featured the Earth as the oppressed rather than the oppressor. It also had the 13-year-old Uso Evin as the pilot, the youngest pilot to date in a mainline Gundam series. It was also one of the most violent and mature of the Gundam shows, featuring high casualties even for Gundam. According to some sources, it also would have led into another series featuring Earth and Martian colonists in conflict, but that never materialized. The series was successful in increasing model sales, but once Bandai had bought Sunrise, it led to something of a rift between Tomino and the production staff, which ended up with some interesting Gundam series down the line. Shippu Iron Leaguer was a series well in the vein of the fusion of genres that this era would be known for, combining sports and robots in a way that had not been seen before. The sports bits were fairly simple, and featured a team of robots that played various games in a hot-blooded fashion, much like typical super robots. This was only touched on because of its fusion aspect, since the robots are sentient and not piloted, but it was a good example of the way the mecha was slowly getting worked into any style of show at this time. The series never made it stateside, but it got an OVA sequel later on. KO Beast was another example of incidental mecha, wherein the series was not specifically a show about the robots in question, but they showed up anyway. This was also a fusion of a fantasy adventure series and mecha, and featured a kitchen sink mentality to its writing. 3 representatives of the animal tribes go on a quest to find Gaia, pursued by 2 human warriors named Vidon and Vijan. The treasure they were hunting ended up being a giant robot, as is so often the case, and they used it to take the fight back to their human antagonists. The OVA lasted for 7 episodes and was brought over by Right Stuff. Patlabor 2, the movie, was a political thriller with a mecha flavoring more than just a typical mecha show, which suited director Mamoru Oshii just fine. While the mainline TV series was much more comedic, the movie was far different and had more in line with a Tom Clancy novel than a typical robot show, even a real robot show like Gundam before it. This movie touched on issues that had faced Japan on the political front in the 20th century, specifically its status as a defeated nation that had clawed its way back after World War II. The twists are enough to require a flowchart, but the movie is gorgeous and moody in a way that Production IG became known for and gained further fame for in 1995 with Ghost in the Shell. And finally, the American entrant into the genre, ExoSquad. This series had a very ambitious scope and storyline for it, considering how many cartoons at the time were considered to be just silly fun for kids. However, it should be noted that Universal was creating this as a direct response to mech anime, according to the executive producer for the show. The series follows ExoSquad, an elite Terran unit of mecha pilots on their missions all over the solar system against the forces of the Neo-Sapiens, a former slave race, and exosuit-equipped pirates. The series was very similar in tone to Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future, which was something of a dark Power Rangers. The show ran for 2 seasons and dealt with heavy topics, especially for an American cartoon, and while it was slated for a 3rd season, it was also cancelled very suddenly. The series also had a strong toy line that featured several reprinted Robotech toys under the headline of ExoSquad Robotech. Also of note that hit the airwaves that year was a little show called Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, an adaptation of the original Japanese Zyuranger. It took off in a major way that's been covered by other people already, but needless to say, it became something of a cultural phenomenon. But next time, we'll take a look at some of the best examples the Fusion era has to offer.